Hi everyone, and a very warm welcome to today's webinar, which is Pensions Assessment in Sage 50 Payroll. My name is Sarah and I'm joined today by my colleagues Duncan and Johnny, who are ready and waiting to answer your questions. And remember, today is part of our Pensions Discovery 2025 badge series. So if you attend at least 5 sessions plus a quiz, you will earn your very own badge. But we will talk a little bit more about that at the end of the session. So first, we will start with a quick recap of your pension duties and what the pension assessment actually is and when you need to run it. Next, we'll dive into the practical side, so how to actually run the assessment, how to navigate the results, and how to spot any changes from one pay period to the next. Then we'll look at how to handle postponement and employee opt-in or opt-out requests when these apply, and how to process them correctly within your pension assessment. And then finally, we'll cover sending pension correspondence to your employees. So we'll look at a couple of the options available for sending or marking your correspondence as sent within the pensions module. But by the end of this session, you should feel confident about running your assessment and managing any requests and keeping your pension communications compliant and all up to date. So let's dive in with a bit of an introduction and reminder of your duties. I want to start with a quick look at your responsibilities as an employer when it does come to workplace pensions. So every employer has certain duties that they need to carry out, and at the heart of this are the 4 key automatic enrolment duties. So here's what they include. Choosing a pension scheme. So you want to select a pension scheme, set it up with your choosing provider, and that's going to be the foundation of your compliance. Next, you'll work out who needs to be put in the scheme. So we'll process called assessing your employees, essentially checking who is actually eligible for auto enrolment. You've then got communicating with your staff, so you must write to your employees to explain how automatic enrolment is going to apply to them. And that's what we call sending pension correspondence. And then finally, you'll need to confirm to the pension regulator that your workplace pension is compliant and that all the information you've provided is accurate. But I have included a link to the pensions regulator website just at the bottom of this slide for more detailed guidance on these steps. So these are the 4 main duties that you need to keep in mind as we go through today's session. Doesn't stop just there. So once you've completed those initial steps, your responsibilities don't stop there. You do have ongoing duties as an employer, and those are just as important. So they involve assessing your employees each pay period. So every time you pay your employees, you need to check their age and their earnings to determine their worker type and whether they need to be enrolled into your pension scheme. So you can do this manually, but today I will show you how to do it using the pension assessment feature of the pensions module. You've got your re-enrolment as well. So every 3 years, you must re-enroll any employees who have previously opted out of the scheme. And that ensures compliance and you're going to keep your workforce covered. You've got a continuing contribution, so you need to keep paying into the pension scheme for eligible employees. And that's just an ongoing financial duty. And then last but definitely not least, you do want to manage join and leave requests. So employees might request to join or leave the scheme, and you're going to be responsible for processing those requests and keeping accurate employee records. So before we dive into the pension assessment itself, I do want to spend a moment talking about worker types, because these will come up a lot during today's session. So when your employees are assessed, they'll be assigned to one of the categories, so entitled, eligible or non-eligible, but I do want to break these down a little bit further for you. So entitled workers are going to be aged between 16 to 74. They'll be working in the UK, but they'll be earning below £6,240. Now, these employees do have the right to join the scheme, but they don't need to be automatically enrolled. Next, you have your eligible workers. So they're going to be aged 22 up to state pension age, again working in the UK. but they'll be earning above £10,000. Now, these are the employees that have to be automatically enrolled. Oh, sorry, I'll just get back on the slide there. These are the employees that have to be automatically enrolled into your pension scheme. So no ifs or buts with that one. If they meet that criteria, they will be automatically enrolled. Now, lastly, you have your non-eligible workers. So there are two scenarios here, a bit different to the other categories. So with these ones, they're going to be aged 16 to 21 or state pension age to 74, and they might be earning above the £10,000, or they could be aged 16 to 74 and earning 6,240 to the £10,000. So just in between that bracket. So either of these scenarios can factor in to the non-eligible workers. Now, these employees have a right to opt into the scheme if they choose. Now, later in the webinar, I will explain the difference between joining and opting in and how to manage those requests as well. But normally you would have to assess employees manually to figure out these worker types. So you would be looking at age and wage and then assigning schemes from there. But that is where the pension assessment tool comes in handy. So it automates the process. So it does that assessment for you and it makes it much easier. But I will show you exactly how that works shortly in the demonstration. So on that note, let's talk about the pension assessment, which is part of the Sage 50 Payroll Pensions module. Now, we do have another webinar of this pension series, specifically on the pensions module and getting that set up and getting started with it if you haven't already signed up for that. Now, the module is designed to make the pension duties quicker and easier for you as an employer. And if you don't have it, it's additional as an additional subscription within Payroll. But I will, if you're not too sure, I will be showing you how to check that as well. Now, pension module includes your pension assessment and your tools for sending your pension correspondence as well, which we'll be covering later in the webinar. Now, you also have a feature to send pension data over to your employer with the pensions module, so either manual report or through the pension data exchange. And again, we do have another webinar coming up on that tomorrow. So what does the assessment actually do? So it automatically assesses your employees based on the age and the earnings. It assigns the correct worker category, so entitled, eligible or non-eligible, based on that assessment. And if an employee is eligible for automatic enrolment, it will automatically assign your pension scheme to them. Now it'll let you filter and view changes from one period to the next, and it will calculate contributions for both the employee and employer. And then last but definitely not least, it will help you manage any employee requests. So that's like your opt-outs, your opt-ins, and your postponements where needed. But in a nutshell, it is just going to take away a lot of the manual work that is required with assessing employees manually. And it'll save you a lot of time, especially if you have a large number of employees to assess each period. But so yeah, really good tool for staying compliant and efficient. Now, you might be unsure if you have the pensions module. So before I show you the pension assessment, here's a quick tip on how to check whether you already have the pensions module in Sage 50 Payroll. So if you simply click on the pension assessment in your payroll software, one of two things will happen. So if you're prompted to take a backup, that's a good sign. It means your license includes the pensions module. But you also might see a message to subscribe instead. So if you see that message on the right-hand side of the slide, then it means your license doesn't currently include it. So you would have to subscribe to get access to that feature. So just a really easy way for you to check before we get started. So before we jump into the demo, let's talk about when you should run the pension assessment during your pay run. So the best time to run it is after you've entered all of your employee payments, but before you generate your pre-update reports. Now, you might be asking why, but at this point, all wages are entered. So that means that assessment can calculate contributions accurately. It also means any changes triggered by the assessment, like enrolling employees or updating any contributions, can be applied to the employees before you update your records and run your reports. Now, where can you find the option? So a couple of different places that you can find it. So you can access it from your payroll tasks, which is what I'll be using today. Or if you do use the process map, you can see it has its own dedicated step there that I've highlighted. So whichever method that you prefer, the pension assessment is quite easy to locate. Now that we know when to run it, let's move on how to run the pension assessment. The good news is there's not a lot that you have to do. It is just clicking the option, but it is really important to make sure you've done some things in the right order so the assessment works accurately. So here are the key steps. So first, you would set the correct process date. So you want to make sure your processing date is correct. So it should be the date of your next pay run. And that's the date you're going to assess your employees for. Next, you want to enter all payments for your employees before running the assessment. And that ensures payroll is going to use the correct wages and date, which can affect your worker type and eligibility. And once those steps are done, you would click on your pension assessment option. And if your subscription includes a module, you'll be prompted to take a backup. Now, I would say this is really important at this point. The assessment will make changes to employee records based on the eligibility. So having a backup means you can restore if needed. It is just an extra layer of security there if you do need to go back. Then finally, you'll view the pension assessment itself and the report. So the assessment will run and you'll see the results on one page. So it makes it really easy to review worker categories, contributions, and any changes as well. But with all of that said, at this point, let's dive straight into the demo and see how all of this works in practice. So I've got my payroll up at the moment. It's a monthly payroll, and my next pay date is going to be the 30th of November. So I can just review that in my status bar at the bottom right, so I can see that I've selected the correct processing date, as that's going to be my next pay run. So that's my first step already done. Now, step 2 is entering payments for my employees. Now, I have already done this just for the sake of time. Most of my employees are in the same amount each month, but I do have a new starter this month, which is employee number 14. Now, I have already added another new starter, but they don't actually start until December, which is employee 15, so I'm going to leave them deselected for now. So I'm going to highlight everyone but. So now for step 3 from my payroll tasks. So I've got payroll highlighted and I'm looking at my tasks just on the left-hand side. I'm going to just go ahead and go straight into my pension assessment. So you can see there it's right in between enter payments and pre-update reports. Now at this point, you can see it will prompt you to take a backup. Now, the assessment will make changes to employee records, so having a backup means you can restore if needed. Now, I already have a backup, so I am going to click no on this occasion, but I would strongly recommend that you take one at this point. So you can see once I click that, it will load the assessment window, and this is what it will look like. So on the left-hand column, you can see we've got the ticks for selecting employees. So you can select or deselect everyone using this top box here, or you can select individually as well. The next column shows flags for this period. So I do have a couple of employees with a flag. So for example, employee number 7 has a flag. And if I hover over it, it shows their worker category has changed. And that makes sense to me because they have now moved to full-time hours. So they now earn more. So they've actually been automatically enrolled into the scheme. Now, employee 14 has a flag. They're a new starter, so they've just been assessed as eligible and enrolled automatically. Now, moving across, we have our employee details. So we've got name, NI number on there, and then we've got worker type and status. So you can see most of my employees are in fact eligible. We do have a couple non-eligible employees in here as well, and some entitled. So some exceptions to that eligibility. So we just have a little look through those. You can see employee number 6 is non-eligible. If I hover over the magnifying glass, it shows that they earn enough, but they are 74. So that's over state pension age. So you can see it will tell me next steps as well. So my job holder may request to opt in if they want to. Now, employee 11 is also non-eligible. If we hover over the magnifying glass there, we can see they are earning enough, but they are 21. So they're not yet in the eligible age bracket, but when they turn 22, they'll then be reassessed. And if they still fall into that eligible criteria, they will be automatically enrolled. And notice those next steps in the bottom again there, so they can request to opt in to the scheme if they need to. Next employees I'm going to check are my entitled employees. So you can see that's employees 8 and 9. So they're entitled workers. Now, they are the right age, but they are part-time, so they are quite low earners. They only earn around £350 a month, so they fall into the entitled category. Now, they can join the scheme if they want to, but something to note with that, if an entitled employee joins, the employer doesn't actually have to contribute to the scheme. But if a non-eligible employee opts in, the employer would have to contribute as well. So that's the key difference between those two worker types. So that's a bit of an overview of the assessment screen. So we've got our flags for changes, our worker types, and quick access to any next steps for those particular employees. And in a moment, we will look at how these opt-in, opt-out, and postponement options as well. Now, I do want to take a look at what those columns mean. So you can see we've got a refunds column here, and that would factor into the opt-out. So if they do opt out within the time frame, the refund would show in a separate column on your pension assessment screen. We do also have a scheme name in here as well. So if you do operate more than one pension scheme, this window will show you exactly what scheme they are in as well. Now, I do want to look a little bit closer at some of the useful tools on this screen. So definitely going to come in handy if you have a larger payroll with a lot of employees on there. So you've got the top right filters. So if you only want to see employees who have had changes in this period, you can see if I choose the drop down, I can filter by that as well. I'm just going to change that back to all. It might well be that if you've got a large payroll, if someone is opting out, it might be quite hard to find if you've got the whole list on there, but you do have a search bar as well. So if I wanted to search for employee 4, you can see I could type in the result there. Now you also have some bottom left selection tools, so you can clear or swap your selection here. And then the totals at the bottom are updated based on how many employees you've selected. So you can see right now, I've got all my employees selected, and that would be the total payment amount for my period. And then finally, you've got some export options just at the bottom right here. So one of your ongoing duties is to keep record of who joins or leaves the scheme. So from here, you can print, email, or export a CSV file of this pension assessment report. But even if there aren't any major changes, I do recommend saving a copy each period, and then you just know you've got a clear record of what's happened each time round. So in short, the pension assessment screen is just going to give you everything in one place. So worker types, contributions, changes, and quick access to any of these actions up here. So it really does take away that manual burden of having to assess employees individually and assigning schemes by hand. So with that said, I do just want to run through a little bit of a recap. Just to recap what we saw in the pension assessment report there. So first, we've seen our flag icons. So hover over those just to see any changes for the employees this period. So you're looking for things like a worker category update or someone that's been automatically enrolled. We've then looked at our top right filters and search. So, you can filter the list to show only employees with changes or search by name or national insurance number for quick access. We've got our worker category and status columns. So these are going to show each employee's category and current status, and you can hover over them for more detail. We then have our contribution details. So on the right-hand side, you'll see your employee and employer contributions, any refunds, and any totals for each row. And then you will see your action buttons. So that's in the top left. And from here, you'll process opt-in, opt-out, join requests, and any postponements, all without leaving that pension assessment screen. So everything you need, changes, categories, contributions, and actions, is all here, all in one place. So speaking of those options in the top left, that does bring us nicely onto the next section. And this is going to be all about postponement, opting in and opting out. So before we go back to the demo, I do just want to go through a little bit of an overview of what these are. So postponement first, you can postpone an employee's automatic enrolment, and that is by up to 3 months. But it is only in specific situations. So you can do it from your duty start date. You can do it from a new starter's first day of employment, or from the first day an employee becomes eligible. So might be if someone has started and they haven't met the criteria, but then a few months down the line, they become eligible, you can use postponement in that scenario as well. Now, postponement is commonly used for, say, temporary staff, so maybe summer or Christmas workers, or employees on a probationary period. But it is very straightforward to apply in the assessment, and I will show you how to do that in just a moment. We then have opt-in or join requests, so employees who are non-eligible or entitled can request to join the pension scheme. So non-eligible employees can opt in, and if they do, remember the employer must contribute also. Entitled employees can choose to join the scheme, but in this scenario, the employer can choose whether to contribute. So both types of employees, non-eligible or entitled, would need to make the request in writing. And then once you get that request, you will process it in the pension assessment. So main difference with these ones is non-eligible employees, the employer has to contribute. Entitled, the employer then has that choice whether they want to or not. We then have opting out. So opting out applies to all employees who are automatically enrolled but decide that they want to leave the scheme. So once they're enrolled, they have a 1-month opt-out period after enrolment. Requests must go through the pension provider, who will then in turn notify you, the employer. You'll process the opt-out in Sage 50 Payroll, but if the employee leaves after the opt-out period, their status will show cessation rather than opt-out, and the refund option won't be available. Now, on the note of refunds, so if the employee opts out within the 1-month period, you must refund their contributions in full, and you can do that through the pension assessment. But if they leave after that, Depends on the pension provider's policy. If they are still going to issue a refund, you can still process it, but it would look a little bit different. So you would have to process it through enter payments rather than the pension assessment. So it can vary on your pension provider. So best thing to do is just check their policy. But I have included a link on the slide for a couple more details on refunds and how to process them manually if needed. But with that said, let's get jumped back into the demo. Just going to bring these slides down again. Now I'm still in my pension assessment for November. And you can see, just as a bit of a reminder, the only changes flagged were employee 7 and employee 14. Now remember, as part of my duties, I will be writing to employees 7 and 14 to let them know they've been automatically enrolled and what that means for them. And I will be doing that via Send Pension correspondence, but I will show you that a bit more later. Those employees will now have the right to opt out if they wish, which they can request through the pension provider. But now I've finished my November assessment, I will close that down. And let's just go ahead and crack on with the payroll. So I would be doing any pre-update tasks, but I'm just going to skip ahead and update my records. I'm just going to get those figures locked in. So I've updated my records for 30th of November. You can see that in the last updated column. So let's just pretend that we've sent our FPS. I'm just going to skip ahead to my December payroll now. So we can look at a few of those options in closer detail. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight all my employees because employee 15 starts in December. I'm going to change my processing date to my next processing date. So that's going to be the 31st of December as I pay on the last day of the month. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my enter payments. So I've made sure my new employee is going to be included, just because I do have some changes to make this pay period. Now I'm going to go ahead to employee 8. Because I know employee 8 will be getting a pay rise this month. So their contract has now changed. The monthly pay is now going to be £825. So I'm just going to change that over. Now I'm going to skip forward just to my new starter, which is employee 15. Just want to do a quick salary check, but that all looks fine to me. So I'm just going to save and close my enter payments. So that's my second step done. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into my pension assessment. Now, again, would strongly recommend, especially if you do have opt-ins or opt-outs to process in a period, the pension assessment will change that data. So definitely take a backup before you go into it. Now, I already have one saved, so just going to skip this part for now. And load my pension assessments screen. So I can see a few icons that, as we know, these indicate changes. So employee 8, if I hover over, you can see their worker category has changed this period. So they've now changed to non-eligible. So they can opt in if they wish. So if I hover over that, we can see that in next steps. Now, employee 11, they were non-eligible, but they've now actually had a birthday. So they've turned 22. So we can see if I hover over the flag, it tells us exactly why it has been flagged as a change. So they've turned 22 and they were already earning enough. So they've been assessed as eligible and they're now automatically enrolled into the scheme. And employee 15, they're our new starter. They meet the age criteria, they meet the wage criteria, so they have been automatically enrolled. So everything looks good, it is assessed them correctly, but I do in fact need to process a few changes. So To do that, I'm just going to deselect everyone first. Now, the first change I'm going to make is for employee 15. Now, employee 15, they are a new starter, but they are actually a temporary staff member for the Christmas period. So they are only here for about 3 months just to help us out over Christmas. Now, I want to postpone their automatic enrolment. So I'm going to take this employee and I'm going to go up the top to the postpone option. Now I'm going to use the calendar to choose my postponement date, because when you use a calendar, as you can see, it will give you the maximum amount of time you can postpone by. So if I go along in the calendar, you can see anything after that date is actually greyed out. Now I'm going to postpone for the full 3 months. So that is going to be the 6th of March, 2026. And then I'm just going to hit on postpone. And you can see a confirmation message will appear. So the postponement has been applied. And then if they are still on the payroll, but we are expecting them to leave before then, if they were reassessed and eligible, they would be enrolled then. But if we press OK on that, see their status has now changed to postponed, and we also have no employee and employer contributions. Now the second change I'm going to make, so I'm just going to untick employee 15, is employee 8. Now they had a contract change, their wage went up considerably, and they have written to me asking to opt into the pension scheme. So they're currently non-eligible, but once they opt in, they will contribute, and me as the employer as well will contribute also. So I'm going to select them, and I'm going to select opt-in join. I'll enter the date that I received the request. So let's just say that's the 11th of December, for example. And I'll choose the pension scheme that they'll go into. Now, if you have multiple schemes, it would show you all of the qualifying schemes in that drop-down. Now, if you want to attach the request, you can do that. There is an option for that. It's not mandatory to still process it, so I am just going to skip it for now. And then I'm just going to go ahead and click opt-in. Press OK on that. And you can see now that this employee's status has changed to opt-in, and it's put them in the scheme in the next pay reference period. So you can see their enrolment date is going to start from the 6th of January 2026. So it'll align to the next pay reference period. So their contributions, they've opted in this period, their contributions will kick in from the next full tax period. So they're fully opted into the scheme. Now, the final change I'm going to make is an opt-out request. So you might remember employee 14, they were automatically enrolled last month as a new starter. So you can see they were enrolled here. What I'm going to do is I'm now going to opt them out. So they've sent a request to the pension provider. I've then received the notice from Nest. So I now need to process this in payroll. And it's very similar to the opt-in process. So I'm going to select the employee, and I'm going to go to opt-out leave. Now you want to enter the date that you received the request. It does turn out that my employee was a little bit outside of the opt-out window. So you can see when they are outside of the opted out window, it will grey out your refund options. So if they're later than that first month, the refund is up to the pension provider. So it might be that they will still refund it. It might be that they miss out if they are out of the time frame. But if they do turn around and are willing to give the refund, you can always refund it manually through Enter Payments. So I'm just going to go ahead and opt out this employee. And you can see that has now changed their status to cessation. So you might see two different statuses with an opt-out. it will show opt out if they opt out within the month. If it's outside of that month, even slightly, it will show cessation rather. But it's done what we intended. We can see it has zeroed out the employee and employer contributions. So I've completed all the actions that I need to do in this window. I do just want to go back for a little bit of a recap, as I know we've went through quite a lot so far. So we've run our pension assessment for December. We've then went through and made some required changes. So we've looked at an opt-in, we've looked at an opt-out and a postponement as well. So we postponed employee 15, we opted in employee 8, and then we did an opt-out for employee 14. So at this point, I would save a record of the pension assessment for my compliance and then continue with my payroll as normal. So again, that really just demonstrates how the pension assessment tool can remove that manual task of checking the eligibility every single period. So it's going to do that automatically, that assessment, and apply the scheme rules for you. So really does save time and reduce any errors that you can get if you do it manually. So to finish things up, I do want to look at another feature of the pensions module, which is sending pension correspondence. I have mentioned this a couple times during the webinar today, and here is why it's important. So as we mentioned at the start of the webinar, under auto-enrolment, one of your legal duties is to write to your employees to keep them informed, and the send pension correspondence option just keeps it really simple. So it allows you to print or to email your pension letters. So it generates general notices, enrolment letters, postponement letters, and re-enrolment letters. It'll also keep a historical record of all letters that you've sent, so you have a full audit trail. If you want employees to receive these by email, however, you do want to make sure that the email address is entered in the analysis tab of the record and that they're set up to receive documents via email. So just a bit of a tip there. So you'll find all of those settings in the employee record. So if you are wanting to email them, definitely worth checking that before you start. But as you can see on the slide, it is a post-update task. But we do recommend checking for letters every time you process payroll, just to stay on top of your duties and to ensure letters are sent by the deadlines. So let's get jumped into one last demo. Now I'm just going to close my assessment. I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead just to updating my records for December. I've got my figures locked in for my December. Now, sending pension correspondence is a post-update task. So I've updated my records and you can see it's just right at the bottom here on your payroll tasks. But you will find the option on the process map as well. So I'm just going to go into send pension correspondence. You can see I can view my historical letters sent, and that will group it by dates. But if I go to letters to be sent, you can see I've got 8 in there ready to be sent, and it'll break it down by employee name, the NI number, and what kind of letter is sent. But just like the pension assessment screen, you do have filters and search tools in the top right if you do have a larger payroll. So it's handy if you need to find a specific employee or a specific letter type. But each letter has a clickable link, so you can preview it before sending. So if I just look at our postponement letter, see it will give you a preview, so you know exactly what to expect. Now on the left, you want to select your employees that you send in the letter to. And on the right, you can see you can enter a sent on date. Now that will default to today, as you've seen, but you can change it. So if you've maybe got stuff in here, so you can see I've got 3 re-enrollment letters that are historical. So I can change those because I actually sent them on the day, but I just forgot to mark them off as sent. I'll just pop those dates in there. You then have the option to say who it was sent by. So it might be that the provider actually sent those ones at the time, or if you have sent it and printed off as a user, you can select the option for user as well. If you're doing it in bulk, you can use these options just down at the bottom here. So I'm just going to go ahead and select my options. Now, depending on if these letters are historical or not, so I'm just going to untick these ones just for now. Because I've sent my automatic re-enrollment ones historically, I am just going to show these ones as sent. Can print additional copies if you want to, but what that'll do just means I've sent them at the time, I've just forgot to tell the system, so that'll clear them off ready for next time for me. Now that leaves the rest of my letters, so I can tick these ones. Now if emailing, the letters will save to Microsoft Outlook, just ready to send. So if you email pay slips, it will be very similar to that. But if you're printing, the usual print window will appear. If I go to send, you can see we've got a couple of options there, and you can print additional copies if you want to keep them for your records as well. You can see it will come up straight away. I'm just going to print it to PDF and save it in here. Just going to call it November pension letters. And once that's done, I did touch on this at the start of this section, but you can view your historical letters by employee as well. So you're always going to have a paper trail of that going forward. So I'm just going to jump back to the slides just to go through one last recap before we wrap things up. So we looked at send pension correspondence. So we looked at how to preview letters. We looked at how to use the filters and search. So again, very similar to the pension assessment. We've got our select employees using the tick boxes. So again, very similar to your pension assessment window. You've got a sent on date, so you can choose whether they were sent historically or if they're going to be sent today by yourself, and whether it was sent by you or the provider. We've looked at marking our letters as sent. So if you've maybe just forgot to mark them off at the time, you can do that and it'll clear them off the system. And how to view historical correspondence as well. So you're always going to have that paper trail in the background. But with that said, that has brought us to the end of today's webinar. So we've looked at running the pension assessment, handling changes, and sending pension correspondence as well. Now, I'd want to wrap things up by running through some further support and pick up any remaining questions as well. So as you know, today's webinar is part of our Pensions Discovery series. So we have a lot of sessions running from now all the way through until December. And if you attend 5 different sessions from this series, plus the quiz, you will earn your very own badge. So make sure to get signed up to earn your digital badge. Don't worry if you've missed any of the ones that have already happened. We are running these sessions twice, so you do have another chance to get signed up for any more sessions. The Help Centre is also a really great resource, so you can access that by clicking on the help icon in Sage 50 Payroll. We've got our support guides on there, our on-demand webinars, and info on how to get in touch with our tech support team if you do need to. Sage Uni is also a great resource. You can do anything from bite-sized bits of learning to full certifications on there. So really can do it all at your own pace. Best thing is it's totally free to set up an account. So get yourself to sageu.com to check that out. Hi again, everyone. I really hope you've all found today's session useful. I will close the session down in the next minute or so. I think I've managed to pick up any remaining questions. But as you exit, you will see a short survey. If you can take a moment to fill that out, that would be appreciated. Your feedback is really valuable to us. We'd love to hear what you thought, what worked well, anything that could be improved so we can keep making these sessions even better for you. You will receive a follow-up email later today. It has a link to today's webinar recording on there and info on how to register for future sessions. But thanks again from me, Duncan and Johnny for joining us today. Hopefully we will see you again soon. It is goodbye for now.